All right, good evening, YouTube. My name is Alan, and it's that time yet again. Let's talk metal. Tonight, we're going back into the new wave of British heavy metal yet again. It's my thing, it's what I do. You know that by now. Uh, but yes, we're going to dive back into the box O singles and pull out a few more new wave of British heavy metal heroes who deserve a little more love and attention than they have been getting lately. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Tonight, we're going to start with a band that has one of the best names in all of heavy metal, WIKKYD VIKKER, and it is spelled in an appropriately 1980s fashion, all kinds of messed up grammar there. So gotta love the name, gotta love the spelling treatment, and gotta love the music. Let's check out a little bit of one of the tracks here. This one's called Black of the Night. All right, there you go with a little bit of WIKKYD VIKKER's Black of the Night. Really cool song. Like that one a lot. It's been a long time favorite of mine. The song on the flip side, Release, to be honest, is not quite as strong as that. This is one of those singles where you've got one killer and one song that's a little bit more filler on the flip side. This one came out in, let's double check, I believe it was 1983, as memory recalls. Yeah, 1983 release. They had demoed some material as early as 81, but the single didn't come out till 83, and it was their only issue. Didn't get any more vinyl product out there before fading off into the obscurities of new wave of British heavy metal time. But yeah, always really liked that Black of the Night single. This was one that I picked up without ever getting to actually hear it. I had seen the band's name on just anthology lists in a collector's book, Heavy Metal: The Vinyl Years by John Allinson, and just figured that name is too cool and that spelling is too messed up. That is so 80s. I'm going to have to track that down. And eventually I did. It's not the easiest single to find, but I got this one from an old collector, Paul Roach, and Paul sold off his heavy metal collection in the late 90s. I was fortunate enough to get a few things from him, including the WIKKYD VIKKER single. So got it and instantly fell in love with that track, Black of the Night. Still one of my favorites from the new wave of British heavy metal. The band has not gotten the anthology treatment, to my knowledge, so I don't know if they simply don't have any more material, if folks have had trouble tracking down members, or maybe they're simply not interested in opening up the vault and showing off what other material they demoed and jammed on back in the day. You never know. A lot of folks really aren't interested in digging up, those old material from the past, and they've moved on and are welcome to just do so and leave the music behind them. But yeah, cool single by WIKKYD VIKKER. Now, one of the guys in WIKKYD VIKKER, guitarist Mark Evans, had been in a different new wave of British heavy metal band previous to this. It was an outfit called Valhalla. Now, there was a Valhalla that released some material on the Neat Records label. That is not the band I'm talking about here. There was a second Valhalla in the new wave of British heavy metal. They released one single on the Asgard label. Let's check out a little bit of this version of Valhalla, again, with Mark Evans, again on guitar. This is from 1980 and is called Lightning in the Sky. All right, so yeah, a little taste of Valhalla. Pretty powerful song. Production's got a little bit of a raw vibe to it. I'm not sure if it's just sort of underproduced or if that's really what they were going for, but it works pretty well. Like both songs on this one, the flip side is called These Sunday Nights, and as the name implies, this one's a little pacier, not quite as up-tempo as Lightning in the Sky, but still a pretty good song. I like both tracks on this. This particular single came out, I think I said already, in 1980, so it predates the WIKKYD VIKKER single by a few years. So once again, the only thing the band really got out back in the day. Now, this Valhalla has gotten the anthology treatment, Cult Metal Classics, which has done a lot of these, released one in 2019 that has about 6 tracks on it. So again, they're able to find at least a few more things that the band had recorded back in the day to kind of help round it out. A lot of these end up being kind of mini anthologies because a lot of these bands didn't last very long. They were around for a year or so tops. So the opportunities to get much material recorded were pretty limited, and to have those tapes survive in any usable form to the present day is also pretty limited. The Valhalla single is a pretty tough one to track down. This is one of the last or most recent things that I finally got off of my new wave of British heavy metal want list, and spent a lot of years waiting to find a copy of this. And nice to have finally crossed that one off the want list. It was on there for a long time. Okay, let's move on to item number 3 for tonight. This is the first single by a much longer running new wave of British heavy metal band called Seventh Son. Their debut single with Man in the Street backed with Immortal Hours. And it's that flip side that I'm going to play a little bit of right now. This is one I'll probably jump a little bit into to get past the sort of intro and onto the song once it's up and running. There we go.
Too much to love you, too much to treat you right. Watching flowers floating fountains, hearing footsteps through the night, yeah. Steal your love away, steal your love away from me.
Yeah, so there you go. One of my favorite new wave of British heavy metal songs. I love the guitar work throughout that. Just as lots of these cool little constantly climbing little scalings throughout. song. It's got kind of a dark, moody atmosphere to it that I like a lot. It's a style that a lot of new wave of British heavy metal bands did use for songs here and there. Most people, when they think of new wave of British heavy metal, they're thinking either of the really up-tempo headbangers like Savage, Loose and Lethal, or they're thinking of like the sort of more dated sounding 70s hard rock influence stuff. But there's a list of bands that did this slightly more atmospheric vibe to their tunes, and I like a lot of those quite a bit. Something you might see a video on sometime, maybe. But yeah, this is their very first single. As you saw, it came with a couple promotional inserts, the little 2-page stapled together bio for the band, some extra stuff too. And usually those kind of things you don't see with singles very often. I have seen multiple copies of Man in the Street and Immortal Hours that have one or both of those kind of promo things included. So I think it was a pretty common inclusion with copies of this single from 1982. And again, Seventh Son is one of those bands that didn't immediately disappear off the map. They did another decent single in 1984 and continued getting a little bit of product out here and there. I think they actually had sort of a very minor hit around 1992. I think the song was called something like Factory Girls or Factory Boots, something about factories or boots, or possibly girls. I don't remember. I don't have that particular one. But bottom line, the band has, sort of stayed active on the music scene for much longer than a lot of new wave of British heavy metal bands did. So, kudos to them for making a go of it for the long term. All right, we've got one last one to talk about tonight. This is another old favorite, and it's another one, if I remember correctly, that I got from Paul Roach when he sold off his collection. I'm pretty sure I got this along with the WIKKYD VIKKER single in the pile of stuff that came out of Paul's collection. And this is a band with a kind of unique name, Bashful Alley. And they released this one single with the songs Running Blind and My, My, My. So before we talk about Bashful Alley, let's see what My, My, My sounds like. All right, Bashful Alley cranking it out there with My, My, My. Both of the songs on this are pretty good. I do prefer My, My, My a little bit, but I like both tunes quite a bit. The band only released the one single back in the day. Real shame that they didn't get more material out. Apparently, they did have more material recorded. This is a band that got the anthology treatment relatively early on. In 2005, a collection called It's About Time was put out, and it has several other really good songs on it. I don't have a physical copy of it these days, but yeah, there's some quality stuff. It's one of the better anthologies that came out around that era. A few things about the Bashful Alley single. There's some weird little collector trivia about this one. First off, it's got that kind of typical monochrome picture sleeve you associate with new wave British heavy metal, but they did it on this very eye-catching canary yellow paper, so makes it stand out and pop pretty well. It's another one with sort of a simple drawing, but very effective. This one's actually nice little pencil sketch portrait of the band, so looks kind of cool. Another thing to note, it was on the LEJ label. Has always this distinctive brown and yellowish pattern to the label. LEJ was associated, if I remember right, with a particular small recording studio in the UK at the time. Several new wave of British heavy metal bands recorded there and put out their singles through LEJ, and a lot of them are considered very collectible these days. Several of them are sort of, sort of big want list items for lots of new wave of British heavy metal collectors. So anytime you see something on LEJ, it's worth stopping and taking a look at, because if it's new wave of British heavy metal, it's a decent chance that it's pretty good and is probably worth a few bucks as well. Now, another little thing with the Bashful Alley single, this one did relatively well out of the gate. The band sold enough copies of it that it ended up getting a reissue soon after on a different label. So, small label I don't really know anything about called Graffiti Records put out the single as well. And again, this came out probably in the same year, probably also 1982, maybe it was early 83, but has the same picture sleeve, except notice that it's on more of like a cream colored paper. It doesn't have that bright canary yellow paper to it. The back of the picture sleeve is still the same tracks, nothing was really added or subtracted, just got a repress on a different label once the original copies had already been sold out and Graffiti picked it up from LEJ. So yeah, it was selling well enough to need a couple of pressings. And you can see why. The tracks are really, really good on it. So again, you can find both versions. This is the repress version. You can also find a third version. And this is one of those things that kind of snuck up on me on eBay once upon a time and just whacked me in the back of the head. Just poking around on eBay looking for, heavy metal records. And noticed somebody had a copy of the Bashful Alley single up for sale. So, I stopped to look at it. I already had those two pressings. So this was just like, oh, that's nice. Let's, check it out. And as I'm looking at it, they had a picture in the auction. And I'm looking at it, I'm just like, that picture sleeve doesn't look quite right. It's white. It's not yellow and it's not cream colored. I looked at the auction real careful. This was one of those singles that had gotten a bootleg pressing on the little Phoenix Records label. They put out several new wave of British heavy metal singles around 2003. They're easy to spot because they're all on colored vinyl, and none of those records were on colored vinyl originally. But looking at this one, it was an LEJ record with it. It's not on any funky colored vinyl or anything. And I'm just looking, I'm just like, something's wrong about that. And it occurred to me it could just be the lighting in the picture. It may not be showing it correctly. I'm not sure. So I ended up, writing the seller of the auction. And I was just like, hey, I noticed your Bashful Alley auction. Nice single, really enjoy it. Is that picture sleeve really white? Like, this may sound like a weird question, but I've got a couple of copies of the single already, and they're not on white picture sleeves. And that one, I don't know if it's just, funny lighting or something. Maybe the picture, color filter is wrong or something, but it just looked different. I just wanted to know. And seller wrote me back, and turned out it was one of the members of the band, which is like, oh, okay. He's just like, hey, thanks for the email. I'm glad you really liked our record. He's like, yeah, it's actually a white picture sleeve. And he's like, and so I wrote back, like, thank you for the information. Why is it a white picture sleeve? I've known about this single for ages. I've owned it for ages. I've never heard of a white picture sleeve. Could you shed a little light on this? He's like, oh, yeah, sure. Really friendly. I cannot off the top of my head remember which band member it was. I should have stopped and looked that up before I did this tonight, but I'm trying to wrap this up before calling it an evening. But yeah, the deal was that when the band did the original pressing, they picked that bright yellow paper specifically because they thought, yeah, that's something that'll kind of catch people's eye. It'll kind of stand out compared to a lot of other singles. But as they were getting the photocopies of the sleeve made, the place they were printing at ran out of the yellow paper. And so they're like, oh, all right, well, I guess we'll just do the last handful on plain white paper. Who's ever going to know the difference? It's not like some, heavy metal nerd's going to be obsessing over the color of the picture sleeve 40 years from now when, he's trying to get multiple copies of it. Yeah, here we are now. Entertain us. So, yeah, it turns out this, was part of the original pressing of singles for sure. And it's just that, yeah, the last couple of handfuls, he didn't have an exact number, but he figured it was maybe a couple of dozen at most, had ended up in plain white sleeves instead of those, more distinctive bright yellow looking sleeves. And I was just like, that's the coolest thing anyone's told me on the internet in so long. And I was lucky enough, I did end up winning the item. He got it shipped to me right away. He even included like a note, like, hey, I'm really glad you won this record. If you're not aware of it, we've just recently put out, this was right around the time that their It's About Time collection had come out. I'm just like, oh yeah, I've got it. I've heard it. Lots of cool stuff on it. At the time I had a copy. So yeah, that's why there's actually lots of folks have long known the first two copies I've shown you. Those have been well documented in references over the years. The third copy on white paper is one that gets overlooked. Again, seems very, very few copies made it out that way. And if you're asking yourself, but Alan, why do you need 3 copies of Bashful Alley just because the picture sleeves are different? It's because I'm a sick little monkey. I think we've established this by now. You've seen the videos. We've been here before. We've done this. You understand. But yeah, so Bashful Alley, cool single, no matter which version you pick up, or hey, track down that It's About Time anthology, and you can hear some more great music by one of the really good new wave of British heavy metal bands. All right, time to call it a night. It's getting late. I'm tired and got a lot to do tomorrow, but let's wrap this up the right way. Let's talk metal in the comments down below. What did you hear tonight that you liked, or what did you hear that you didn't like? Any new wave of British heavy metal obscurities that you're thinking to yourself, why in the name of Lemmy has he not talked about this single yet? Hey, yell at me in the comments down below and let me know what it is you'd like me to cover. Might be something I have and just haven't got around to. Might be something I don't have or something I've never heard of. There's lots of new wave of British heavy metal out there. Hundreds of bands did tons of records. I certainly haven't heard them all. So if it seems like I'm glossing over or overlooking something that needs and deserves some attention, by all means, leave a comment below and point me in the right direction. All right, everybody, until next time, take care, and as always, keep banging your head.